like I said, it happens, and hopefully some kids can learn from it, but just don't get caught.
I'm down to dunk.
And I'm down to dunk. I'm down to dunk. This is J-Dub, and I'm down to dunk.
I'm Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, and I'm down to dunk.
This is Lindy Waters, and I'm down to dunk. I'm Mike Muscala, and I'm down to dunk.
This is Jay Will, and I'm down to dunk.
This is Kenneth Williams, and I'm down to dunk.
This is Lou Dort, and I'm down to dunk.
Will you say this is Lou Dort and I'm down to Dort?
This is Lou Dort, and I'm down to Dort.
Cracklin Oat Bran?
Have you had Cracklin Oat Bran?
No,
No. Okay.
but it's healthy.
Are you a big oat brand guy?
I'm a big Oat Bran guy.
Okay.
I think I would switch it with Fruity Pebbles.
Okay, eat faster. Don't put as much in the bowl.
You have a gallon of milk I can also take home.
You don't have milk at home?
One cinnamon toast.
Okay.
Crunch. Yeah. Cereal is great. Yeah.
Welcome to Down to Dunk. I'm your host, Andrew Schlecht. We're part of the Athletic Podcast Network. With me, as always, on Wednesdays, my good friend Alex Speers. Alex, what's up?
What's up, Andrew? Andrew, are you bummed out at all that the Celtics won? Because you could have had a week without having any basketball that you have to watch. You might be able to catch up on shows. You know, you might be able to enjoy other hobbies.
I will say absolutely not, because having to fill content for 8 straight days previewing the NBA Finals.
So you need this to go 7.
I need this to just at least six, because the thought of previewing the NBA Finals for 8 days, a finals that the public did not ask for. You know?
Right, yeah, it's not like those shows wouldn't get like big numbers.
Yeah, and I was not particularly excited about that. And not to say that we can't make, I think like a Heat Nuggets finals, there's a lot to break down. And I think it'd actually be really great. But I don't know that the general NBA fan would look at it and say, hey, wow, this is going to be awesome. You know,
You would need a lot more scuttlebutt.
yes,
Kind of bridge the gap there.
totally. And, you know, we're just not quite there with the scuttlebutt. So, you know, I am glad, and I hope they win Game 5.
Oh, okay.
And I hope, I still think, if anybody is going to be the first team ever to come back 3-0, it's like a first seed Celtics team versus an 8th seed Heat team.
Yeah.
You know,
They've got the lineage with the Red Sox. You know, it's in the Boston blood. So
they do.
maybe.
It's happened in Boston before. We'll see. They do have Game 5 and 7 at home. So, but also the Heat have just been ridiculous the entire playoffs. So, who knows? Who knows? I'm glad it's continuing though, and I hope that it does for a long while. Okay, Al. It's funny. If you're only listening on the podcast feed, which is a majority of you, on YouTube, as a part of the intro, I have Mitch McGarry saying, "Just don't get caught," which you put on Twitter yesterday, that the Jokic draft was the year the Thunder drafted Mitch McGarry, which continues to be like the most like one of the more flabbergasting moments in Thunder history. You know, looking back at it, you know, like with hindsight, that like, man, the Thunder drafted Mitch McGarry. Like, wow.
I mean, honestly, that looking back at that draft, I still think Hustis is like way more of a what just happened pick than McGarry, because you can understand why they picked Mitch.
Oh, yeah, it's not the talent; it's just the personality. It's just
and we don't
everything else.
I guess we don't know like everything they knew at the time. And he seems like a very charming guy, so I'm sure that he was able, like in interviews, he probably did really well.
Yeah. He was the first down to dunk player intro. Mitch McGarry was.
Yeah, so I can't judge them drafting him on the talent, because like we even saw flashes, as an NBA player. But yeah, that draft. Not that I expected them to take Jokic. Like looking back, it's not that
no.
because no one was talking about Jokic. He was drafted during a Taco Bell commercial.
Yeah.
Like I'm not mad about that at all.
Yeah,
It just happened to be one of the worst drafts in like this Thunder era.
Yeah, it was really bad, and it's okay. It's okay.
Hey,
Like,
they actually got two really charming guys because Josh Eustace. I mean, he's a great guy.
extremely charming guy. Former Locked On Thunder. Was it? Is that what?
Host.
When Fred was hosting it, was it Locked On Thunder then?
No, wasn't it Thunder After Dark?
Well, he started Thunder After Dark as his own show.
Wait, he did. He did like the Locked On Thunder.
Pretty
show?
sure. I'm pretty sure that's right. But he was on the show.
Yeah.
know, and it is like legitimately friends with Fred. Like they will like text.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah, he was very good on podcasts.
Yeah, he's great. But the charmingness between Eustace and McGarry is a different kind of charm. Like McGarry has like frat charm.
Yeah, he's like dumb jock charm.
Yeah. Where like Eustace is like just like down to earth, just regular kind of dude.
Yes, he always came across as like very relatable when he was.
Yeah. It's just there's some players within like these draft picks that are like still playing in the NBA, like Clint Capella and
Kyle Anderson.
Kyle Anderson is there. Remember KJ McDaniels? Remember the hoopla over KJ McDaniels?
All warranted. Joe Harris was right there.
Joe Harris was
Dinwiddie,
right there.
Jeremy Grant.
Yeah.
There was a surprising number of names given how like bad it was starting at right after TJ Warren. It was like Adrian Payne, Yusuf Nurkic, good pick. James Young, Tyler Ennis, Gary Harris. I guess he's still playing.
Yeah.
Bruno Caboclo, Mitch McGarry, Jordan Adams, Rodney Hood, who was like the best of these guys so far because he actually did play a little bit.
Yeah.
Shabazz Napier, and then you get to Clint Capella, and from there you start getting some names like you get a Bogdanovich.
Yeah.
You got a Kyle Anderson. So it was a good draft at the very end. Oh, and Mitchich was in that draft, number 52.
Yeah. Yep.
How about that? Future Thunder starting point guard.
Say backup point guard for the Thunder next year.
He's only come over if he can start, Andrew. Okay. Shea's got to sacrifice a little bit for the team.
Is that true that he will only come over if he'll start?
No. I think it was just that he would only come over for like a winning situation.
Yeah. Well,
Hey.
Should we place the football in front of the Thunder fans yet again? Just to remove it?
I hope so. I love that's like my favorite reoccurring story.
It's a hilarious one.
I really hope we get some little nugget this summer that he might come over.
It's going to happen.
As long as we can get one podcast episode in like August about, hey, Mitchich coming to OKC.
Hey, he would
or just trades. That would be cool too.
He would fit really well with this team.
He would.
Yeah, he's a Thunder guy through and through.
It's time. Bring Mitchich home.
So it's mock draft season. Everybody's got a mock draft out there, and I went around and just wanted to see who the common names were that the people think the Thunder would take. The most common name that I found. Do you want to try to guess who it is?
Common name. I'm going to guess Cason Wallace.
Cason Wallace is one of them, but Keontae George.
Oh, really?
Was a very common Thunder pick. Which was a little like NBA.com had him, USA Today had him. There were several others that had Keontae George, which I was a little surprised. I like Keontae George. I think he's going to be an interesting player, but doesn't necessarily fit Thunder mold. Like he doesn't have size for position. He's not that great of a passer. I thought that was interesting. But like Sports Illustrated and Bleacher Report both had Cason Wallace.
Yeah.
Which I think is interesting because you look at the way the Heat play and like you could see Cason Wallace playing for the Heat, like he's that kind of guy. And you just wonder if he's going to get some kind of bump because of like, if you I've been trying to think of another way to say you got that dog in him. all morning. I don't really know what else to say. But plays with a certain vigor and intensity. He's definitely one. Jarris Walker is another one that like really sticks out amongst this group of players that like could rise just because like, oh man, like guys that could potentially be, really big game changers in the playoffs. Like those are the kind of guys that could.
You bring up how we could play on the Heat. We're at the point where, assuming the Nuggets and the Heat are in the finals, people are going to, try to dissect these teams. Like, what could we possibly learn from these championship teams? And in general, I think it's really hard because the like central characters in each team story is just like there's such one of one people, whether it's Jokic or Jimmy Butler.
Yeah.
But I do think there are shades of what the Thunder are trying to do in both of these teams. Like for the Heat, the fact that they have so many guys, we talk about decision making all the time.
Oh yeah.
And part of decision making isn't just like the ability to make a decision, but to make it quickly. And you have seen that with the Heat, where like when a guy gets the ball swung to him on the perimeter, he's immediately doing something with it. And you kind of see that in the Thunder's makeup. And then with the Nuggets, it's just kind of this idea that everyone can kind of handle the ball. Everyone can kind of do a little bit of something on the court. They're all working in this like perfect like harmony with each other, which I also think is something that the Thunder would, aspire to.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the difference for both of these teams is, I mean, the Heat aren't traditionally a good shooting team, but they've been an incredible 3-point shooting team in this playoff run. And then the Nuggets have been a really good shooting team just in general.
Yeah.
Like pretty much everyone they throw out onto the court, there's not really a weak link there necessarily that guys are definitely sagging off of. I mean, maybe Aaron Gordon, but that's about it. The fact that Jokic can hit those ridiculous threes is pretty amazing. But yeah, so I don't know. I look at these two teams making the finals potentially as a good sign for the future of the Thunder.
Yeah, and just like continuity in general.
For sure. Yeah, big win for continuity.
Yeah, both these teams have gotten here not because of like some big trade or free agent acquisition or
it's
like
been a pretty slow build of like gradually adding players, especially in the case of Denver.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you look at Denver through the years. I mean, you look back at what they were even like 4 or 5 years ago, and they had to change a lot in order to get to this place. And Calvin Booth, deserves a lot of credit for what he did over the summer. Because it's not easy to build a contender. Like you even look at like the 1920 team, and there's like a lot of different faces on that squad. I mean, you look at most minutes played, like Will Barton played almost 2,000 minutes for that team. Jeremy Grant was on that team. Gary Harris, Monty Morris, Paul Millsap played 1,200 minutes for that team. Torrey Craig
played 1,000 minutes.
Torrey Craig, Mason Plumlee, Malik Beasley, like those were big, players there, and that wasn't that long ago. Then you look at 21, and like the players that played the most. Will Barton is still way up there, 1,700 minutes for him. Campazzo played almost 1,500 minutes.
Fifth most minutes.
Yeah. Monte Morris and Millsap and JaMychal Green and PJ Dozier, like those are guys that played a ton of minutes for them. And then I could just take shape, but it's always like Jokic and Murray and some of those years Murray, was injured, but they found the right kind of iteration. They've got healthy, and just like the average age of their team, and this is something that I feel like I harp on probably too much, it's just like now at the level where it's like, okay, like now it's time to like really go get it. Just because like Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray, they're like in their prime. Like these are the years where you can really, really go for it. And we're seeing it. And it took a lot of time, and it took them stumbling, and it took them, looking like maybe they need to make a big trade, or when are they going to actually pull the trigger or whatever. But it was just like patience and like adding guys here and there. The Aaron Gordon trade was really big for them. So it is like that patience element that we talk about a lot with the Thunder, because I think that we look at this Thunder team right now, I'm like, oh, we're always going to have like these 7 guys on the team. And like, maybe that's true. Not everybody has to take the same path that like of patience and it looking the same. But, this team is going to change over the course of the next like 5 years quite a bit, and the core won't change, just like with Denver. Like the core didn't change, but the surrounding cast changed quite a bit. And so it's just interesting. Like we think so much of some of the guys that are like even Isaiah Joe, who had like an amazing season for the Thunder. But like, is Isaiah Joe guaranteed to be a part of this team in even 3 years? I mean, I would say no. History says that like these players like that usually move on at some point, or the Thunder feel like they need to upgrade in some kind of way, or maybe they do upgrade, through the draft or something like that.
Or it just gets to the point where Isaiah Joe's up for a contract and like it just doesn't make sense for the Thunder at that time. I mean, the way that Miami has timed this run, because they have these guys in Max Strus and Gabe Vincent who are not making anything.
Right.
Like all of a sudden that gets much tougher next year. I mean, if they kept both of those guys at what they could probably get on the open market, they will probably be pretty close, if not definitely over that second apron.
Yeah.
Which obviously triggers all those negative effects. So they're kind of in a sweet spot right now. It's good that they're taking advantage of it.
Yeah, I am interested to see how they keep this team together. Like, what do they? I mean, I don't know that they can trade Tyler Hero at this point, this summer. But like, do you trade him in an effort to keep this team together?
I mean, if they did make him available, don't you think that he? Well, let me ask you: who would you rather have, just for a general team, Tyler Hero or Jordan Poole?
I would rather have Hero.
I think I feel the same way.
Yeah.
So if he is available, because I've seen people throwing around some Jordan Poole trades that like look decent in terms of the return for Golden State.
Yeah.
So if Miami made Hero available in an effort to try to shed some of that salary because they want to keep these other guys, maybe they could get a fine return.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what are the years left on Hero's deal?
He's got 4 years left.
Ooh, that's the thing. And it's at what's the
it goes 27, 29, 31, 33. And it doesn't start till next season.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot for Tyler Hero. You got to be pretty committed to him as like a core member of your team, not just like some shooter, Yeah, that's interesting.
Jordan Poole, though, 28, 30, 33, 35. He actually makes more than Tyler Hero.
What in the world are they going to do with that contract?
I mean, somebody will take it. I just feel like there's so many of these guys available because you could throw Anthony Simons into that as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
And
they're
so
going to attach him to the 3rd pick.
Yeah. And then you look at the draft and it feels like it's a bunch more of these guys.
Oh, so many more of these guys are entering the league, which is, it's to me, I would feel a little bit like, hey, I'd rather just pay that guy, $1 million rather than 30.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of guys that profile as the bench scorer that are in this draft. I mean, Keontae George and Nick Smith Jr., Bryce Sensabaugh is definitely that kind of guy. Hood Scafino, our guy Buffkin.
And that's just why I feel like some of these wings are going to move up the board. Even ones that, like, whether it's someone like City Sissoko or like Derek Lively going way higher than anyone thinks. I'm just not convinced that the league really values combo guards like this, where they're just going to all go from like 10 to 15.
Yeah, it is going to be really interesting to see because that's where a lot of the talent is, though, in this draft. Because like Derek Lively, I'm kind of I don't know. Sure, he's shooting threes at the combine, but it's like, do we really believe that Derek Lively is going to take threes?
You don't believe him?
I don't know. We've seen big men shoot and make threes in a practice setting.
Yeah, Willie Cauley-Stein was one I remember.
Yeah,
I will say I do think Derek Lively took and made threes in high school.
Yeah.
I forget which big he played with. He played with a very good big.
And maybe he does. Maybe he does. And that's great. He just doesn't have the skill level. And maybe he ends up being a really good player. I don't know. I'm kind of I don't think the Thunder would consider him if, some people are talking about him at 12. I just don't think that that's a genuine possibility. But yeah.
Do you
yeah.
obviously people have been talking about trade up scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
Which I've been kind of lukewarm on just because I don't have a clear target in my mind of who I would want them to move up for. But I will say it does kind of feel like right around pick 10, there is kind of a drop off after that of just guys that I don't think are going to fall that far beyond 10.
Yeah.
Maybe someone jumps up and that is proven wrong. But so a lot of people have been talking about the idea of either moving up for the Mavs pick or just trading for the Mavs pick. Is there someone that you just love so much that either you want to make sure you get them at 10 or that if they fell to 10, you would like prioritize that kind of a move?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, if Anthony Black fell there, that is obviously a guy that I would
You'd sell the farm for.
I wouldn't sell the farm for him, but
It sounds like you'd sell the farm, Andrew.
I would like to have him. I just have a hard time believing, and I would actually very much back this if they would do it. I just have a hard time believing that they would take somebody like Taylor Hendricks in the lottery. But it's not hard to see how somebody like that could play for the Thunder and play really well, especially next to somebody like Chet. Just because like his weak side shot blocking ability and his shot making from the perimeter as a play finisher, he can get up for some lobs. Like there's some really intriguing things about him that the Thunder just don't have. But playmaking is not necessarily his forte. And so are they in a spot where they think we have enough playmakers? I just don't know that that's the case. But that would be somebody that I think would make a lot of sense for a trade up to 10 to like fill a spot, to fill a void. I just don't know that they're willing to take somebody like that in the lottery that is not necessarily a decision maker. But I think I would like that. Also, in the same vein, like Grady Dick is definitely somebody too, as like a 6'7" lights out shooter that Vicini on Slam and Jam a couple of weeks ago described as like somebody that could fit in the construct of a team defense. Like that's definitely something that they could use. Just somebody that bends the defense on the perimeter would be very meaningful. And I think that everybody could use that kind of release valve on this team. That's just like if we don't close out to this dude, the Thunder they're going to punish us. They're going to punish us because of this guy. And so we have to keep somebody glued to him. And because of that, Shea and J-Dub and Giddey and Chet can kind of shake loose a little bit. Like I can easily talk myself into that. And I think Taylor Hendricks could do the same thing for them, just from a different position. So I could definitely talk myself into it. Do I know if the Thunder want to move in that direction? I don't know. If they're ready to do something like that, or if they would just rather continue to add like these like bigger playmakers and just have like one of the weirdest teams. I tend to believe they want to go unconventional, which I think Grady Dick and Hendricks are very conventional players to add to this team. Not to say that the Thunder couldn't or wouldn't do that, but I just tend to believe they're going to continue to go unconventional with their methods. And so, that's my take.
So there's two paths to the 10th pick. One is trading up, which I think the idea there would be Dallas doesn't have a lot of future assets. So if you could give them the 12th pick and a future pick or picks, because we've seen that the Thunder have been willing to shell out picks to like do stuff in this range. Yeah. That would be one option. The other option would be, could you just get this pick from the Mavs again, having 2 lottery picks in the way you did last year, this year it'd be with 10 and 12, where maybe you take back some of their bad contracts because they're very close to the second apron line going into next season if they bring back Kyrie at what he would likely get.
Gosh,
I mean, because
what a nightmare.
they're at 108 right now. So if he signs for a deal that's like 40, they're going to be close to 150. And at that point, they still need to fill out the rest of the roster. They still need about, like, I would say, I'm looking at this rough guesstimate, like 6 more people to fill out a roster. So they would potentially be pushing up against that at some point.
So like this Bertans.
Yeah, it'd be like Bertans. JaVale McGee is another one. What's scary about both of these guys is that they're not just expiring contracts next year. They go into 24-25, and they're both player options.
Oh, they are. They're just go ahead and cement Davis Bertans for
you think
the
he's picking it up?
season. I think he's picking up 17 mil. I think he's picking up. The big problem with the Mavs, though, is can they really use the 10th pick to just shave their cap?
Well, what if you gave them one of our, like, I mean, we have picks in the future that aren't that exciting.
I think they have to get a player.
But the chances of them getting a player and him actually contributing before Luka's going to be making a decision is very low.
Oh, I know that, but I'm saying that if you trade the 10th pick, you need to get a player.
Oh, a player back.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Well, I mean, we have players on our team.
Yeah,
players on the roster.
We do. Who would help? It's so funny. David Nawaba is still, for some reason, on this Fanspo trade.
We're never going to get rid of David Nawaba.
He's just on there.
He's going to be talked about in fake trades by, like, national media members.
Maybe we can trade them David Nawaba. Just show them this and say, "Hey, we'll give you David Nawaba, and we'll take on Bertans for the 10th pick." Yeah, I mean, if you look at the Thunder's picks that they can trade, I mean, if I'm the Thunder, I'm not trading any of the Clippers or Rockets picks. I'm just not doing it.
And I would throw the Philly pick into that now as well.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That is an interesting one. Miami pick is, I mean, it's also interesting. It's also kind of, there's some juice that could be had there because
they've kind of shed themselves of boring picks.
I know, that's the thing. Is
now that I'm looking,
traded all of their boring picks for Jang.
I mean, maybe you could say the Utah pick next year is boring just because if it conveys, it's going to be late lottery, and if it conveys next year, it's going to be in a draft that people aren't high on. But at the same time, like, that could be a lottery pick.
Could be a lotto pick, and probably the Nuggets top 5 protected pick in 27.
That's still interesting.
27 is a long time away. There's a lot of years.
Away.
I mean, who knows what happens?
Sounds like we actually need to get some dumb first round picks.
We have no dumb first round
picks. We need to restock the cupboards.
Because you look at so what they have left. Clippers unprotected or Clippers swap, which won't convey. 24 is unprotected, 25 unprotected swap, 26 unprotected fully, which has it's basically just a big box of orange juice. So much juice. Rockets top 4 protected, 24 obviously, top 10 swap in 25 protected, top 10, which like could actually convey.
Yeah.
Like, is there a chance that the Rockets pull enough vets in where they are either a not so bad team that maybe they make the play in 25 and the Thunder are like in the playoffs in 25?
Yeah.
Like that could truly convey. And then top 4 protected in 26, which I would guess would convey as well. The top 10 protected Jazz pick in next year's draft, which Tony Jones would say would convey. You have the top 14 protected Heat pick in 2025, which is likely to probably convey then. But then if it doesn't, it becomes unprotected in 26. You have the top 6 protected Sixers pick in 25, which goes to top 4 protected the following year, top 4 protected in 27 as well. And then you have the top 5 protected Nuggets pick, which will likely convey in 27. So
That Heat pick, though, I mean, we saw it this year. Like, they barely made the playoffs. Like,
I know.
like if you have that scenario in 2025 and they just lose that second game to Chicago, all of a sudden they're keeping their pick that year and it's becoming unprotected to the Thunder the following season.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. It obviously sounds crazy now because they're on the doorstep of the finals, but
I mean, Jimmy
if they-
Butler will be 35.
yeah, I still think that pick is got a little juice. All these picks.
There's juice galore.
Okay, so players.
Picks.
So here's the thing with trading players from the Thunder. We obviously love all
All
of
of
these guys.
Every
all.
single one. Yeah.
We can imagine them succeeding either because we still have hope from years ago or because they were good last year. But if you were trading for the 10th pick in a scenario where you're drafting 10 and 12, like, let's be honest, like, a lot of these guys are just not going to be able to get minutes to an even more extreme degree than it's been in the past.
Yeah.
So as much as I love, like, Aaron Wiggins, Isaiah Joe, like, guys who really mattered to this team last year, if you really are bringing in 2 lottery picks, can you, like, at that point, I feel like it's hard to commit to all of these guys.
Yeah. Would you trade Wiggins and Joe and take back Bertans? Which this is one where if there's somebody that is listening that doesn't follow the Thunder, that is like listening in and like, I'm a Pistons fan, but I want to listen to this Thunder podcast, you're going to say, what in the world is he talking about? Sure. I get that.
Is it like that Rockets podcast I sent you?
Yes, it's exactly like that. We're saying, I don't know if I can do that. You know,
I sent Andrew a Rockets podcast, which I will not name. First of all, I'll just say that fan podcasts create the best content out there. You need to listen to more fan podcasts because they're really funny, including ours. I'm sure we've said a bunch of dumb stuff because we're in our little Thunder bubble
all the time.
But they were one guy proposed a trade up to try to get Scoot Henderson, and the deal was pick number 4. You're taking back Gordon Hayward's contract. But he said, would you be willing to do it if you had to include KJ Martin Jr.? And it became like a legit talking point. And I'm just like screaming at my phone, like, what are you talking? It's Scoot Henderson. Like, this is the guy that would be a perfect fit for your team. And you're hemming and hawing about KJ Martin Jr., a guy who demanded a trade last season. He demanded a trade. Anywho, yes. So we are talking.
KJ's good. Like, KJ's a good player. I like KJ Martin.
That's fine. We're talking about Scoot Henderson.
We're talking about the second pick in the draft. That's the thing is, like, trading for the 10th pick is kind of whatever, you know, or trading.
I know that's why
it's kind of whatever. But trading up to 2, those trades require, you know, truckloads of juice.
Yeah,
to get there. And KJ Martin is not providing any of that.
Not enough juice. Okay, so the deal is Wiggins, Isaiah Joe for the 10th pick. You're still keeping the 12th.
Yeah.
And you have to take back Bertans. I probably don't do that, to be perfectly honest, but it has more to do with just how I feel about this draft. Like, even though I did just say that it feels like there is a cutoff point where there's a certain group of guys that just aren't going to fall.
Yeah.
I don't care too much. Now, maybe there will be a player by the time we get to the draft where if they did fall, like I'll just mention one guy who I am starting to get a little interested in, Sword Thompson.
Yeah.
If he somehow fell to 10, okay, now I'm starting to get a little more interested, and I would consider a deal like that where you're giving up some stuff, you're taking back a contract that's legitimately bad, and you are going to be stuck with likely for the next 2 years. But right now, there's just without knowing who's going to be there at 10, it doesn't feel like it's worth it. Like you're 2 picks away at 12.
Yeah.
Is there someone that you love so much that you just have to go get them at 10 in this draft?
Yeah. I don't know. I would guess not. I would guess I would guess for the Thunder, no. But like I said, I could talk myself into Grady being that guy. Or basically you taking Bertans and using Joe and Wiggins or Joe and whoever. I mean, Kenrich might be somebody that the Mavs would be like, hey, we'd do it with Kenrich Williams in the deal.
He'd be great. for the
Um,
Mavs.
yeah, he'd be awesome for them. And then you basically are upgrading that Joe spot to Grady Dick, you know,
Mm-hmm.
is definitely something that I think would be interesting.
And as cheap as Isaiah Joe is right now, like anyone you draft at 10, you have greater or longer control
Yeah.
over that contract. Because
Yeah.
we don't know what Isaiah Joe, if he keeps shooting 45%, like the Thunder or someone is going to give him a nice contract.
Yeah, definitely. And just having a taller version of that is like worth an upgrade, certainly.
Yeah, taller shooter. Yeah.
I just don't know that they would deal Kenrich. I think he means so much to the team. And that also is like, if you're on the outside looking in as a non-Thunder bubble person, that might seem silly. But he does mean a ton to the team. And I just think that they value somebody that wants to be here, like desperately wants to be here. And somebody that can contribute at a high level. I mean, the team was playing their best basketball when they had him as the 5-man. And to just have that as a weapon next year where they can bring him off the bench and like maybe they just need to, maybe Chet just can't play a particular game due to injury, due to whatever. And like you still have that in your back pocket. And it's like, oh yeah, crap. The Thunder can play this like 5-man lineup that is just going to obliterate everybody. I wouldn't want to trade that for the possibility of somebody in this draft at 10.
Knowing that you still have your pick at 12. Like
No, you still have
you're gonna
12
get
and you
someone.
can find, I think they can find value at 12. Definitely. So yeah, I don't even know how desperately they want to get off the Bertans contract. I think Bertans would actually be good with Oklahoma City. I think he would play.
He probably would. He'd
And I think
probably
Mark
shoot
would,
45%.
yeah, Mark would find a way to use him. That's the thing that this Thunder team has done to this point that I don't think we're particularly familiar with, in the past, is that this system where everybody gets to touch the ball, everybody's involved, makes players look better than they are. I think it's done that with Joe and Wiggins and players like that, where it's like, oh my gosh, these guys are irreplaceable. I think some of it's Mark. I think some of it's this team, similar to what we saw with like the San Antonio Spurs through the years. There were guys that just could come in and play for them. Like I think of Jonathan Simmons. He came in and it was like, who's this guy? Like he actually went to a Spurs G League tryout off the street.
Yeah.
And made the G League team and then worked his way up to the Spurs and played.
And then got a contract with the Magic.
Got a contract with the Orlando Magic and was terrible for them, but got paid because of the way he functioned within the system, within the Spurs. And I think the Thunder are developing a similar thing. I'm not confident. I'm confident Aaron Wiggins can be good for the Thunder. Am I confident if like the Cavaliers saw what Aaron Wiggins was and were like, hey, we want to plug him in and we think he could be our 3. Like I'm not confident that Aaron Wiggins would be a player that could play for the Cavaliers.
I feel more confident in Wiggins than like Lance Thomas. I mean, we felt similarly about him around that time. The plagues of Egypt season.
Yeah.
When it was like, wow, hey, this guy's playing kind of well. And then he went to the Knicks and we were kind of bummed out about it. And he actually was decent for a little while. And
I was going to say he had a minute with the Knicks where he was pretty good.
Yeah, Jonathan Simmons made $15 million. Good
hey, shout out to the Spurs for getting that.
Actually, he was involved in the Markelle Fultz trade with the Sixers. He was traded by the Magic. Oh, wow. Listen to this.
Let's listen. I'm listening.
February 7th, 2019. The Magic signed this terrible deal. He got about 2 years, $12 million with the Magic. Simmons did. They trade him to Philly with a 2020 first-round pick for Markelle Fultz. That 2020 first-round pick ends up becoming the pick that Mitch McGarry – no, not Mitch McGarry.
My mind was blown when you said Mitch McGarry. I was just like, what? Okay, continue.
Other double M white guy, Mike Muscala,
Yeah.
stole from us in the bubble that became Tyrese Maxey,
Yeah. Wow.
which is kind of wild to think about.
That is wild to think about.
Because that was seen as like such a give up trade by the Sixers at that point, because they were trading, this former number 1 pick, and they get back this pick that they ended up trading and protecting, and then they end up with Tyrese Maxey. Pretty good trade.
Wow.
Okay, I wanted to talk about the CBA real quick because
Let's take a quick break, and then we'll
quick break.
Let's talk about the CBA real quick. And we're back from that quick break. It's time to talk about the CBA real quick.
Yeah, so Nate Duncan, Dunked On, had a free podcast on their feed with Larry Kuhn, who is a CBA expert.
Yeah.
And he is great. Knows a lot. And they broke down this new CBA in a way that I haven't heard it been broken down before. And there are a lot of details I'd never heard before. And I'd already been thinking about the CBA more because of all the talk about Jaylen Brown's Supermax.
Yeah.
And the idea that if Boston does sign him to that Supermax, where I believe at some point he's making $60 million a year, and then you have Tatum coming up in the next few years, he's obviously going to get a huge extension. It becomes really hard just to field a team when you have 2 Supermax guys, or let's just say you have 3 max guys, which I do think is potentially in the cards for the Thunder in the future. So everyone has probably heard about a lot of the restrictions that are placed on you when you cross that second apron, which the estimate of what that second apron is going to be is somewhere around 179 million for next year, which if you look at this season, only 2 teams crossed that.
Yeah.
And Golden State, actually 3 teams did. It was the Clippers, Golden State, and Milwaukee. Milwaukee was within 3 million. So you imagine that in this scenario, they could have gotten under that second apron. Boston was $1 million under that 179 million mark. But I go back to thinking about team building and how so many people over the last couple of years have made jokes about first round picks in reference both to Sam Presti and the Thunder, but also towards some of these other teams like Houston or Utah that just seem to be collecting all these picks. And you've heard this idea. I've heard this idea of maybe just first round picks just aren't that valuable anymore. And all these teams are collecting these picks that aren't going to hold any value. When you start thinking about the new CBA, I think the value of first round picks is going to rise exponentially in the coming years. If you are a team like Boston, who is going to have either multiple Supermax guys, or if you're a team like the Thunder, who potentially could have 3 max guys at some point in the future,
or
having controllable low-cost contracts specifically tied to players who have high upside, because obviously a lot of these teams, and we'll see it with the Lakers this summer, can just go get a bunch of vet minimum guys that are signed for a year.
Yeah.
There's not a ton of upside with those types of contracts.
Mm-mm.
Whereas if you have these first round picks and you're able to bring in guys, and a lot of these picks, as we mentioned, are going to be pretty juicy, bring in guys who do have upside and are cost controlled for multiple years, I just think that is going to be so valuable in the coming years for teams who are trying to truly contend.
Yeah.
Because
I think
and so I go back to the way people have been talking about first round picks. I actually think it's going to be flipped, where a lot of these teams that have given away their picks, they're actually going to be looking to try to trade for first round picks, even if they're not great first round picks, just so they can get some of these contracts on their roster.
Yeah.
Because it's going to make it so much easier
for a long time.
Yeah.
That's the big deal. It's even if you only get some kind of role player at the 17th pick,
right.
You have them cost controlled for 4. You can sign them to what are typically very reasonable contracts for the second one.
Yeah.
And then who knows with their third, but just having the 4 years on the rookie scale is huge.
Yeah.
It provides so much flexibility, especially if they can play. And not everybody can play right away, but if you scout right, you can find guys that can play a little bit right away. I mean, the Nuggets, Christian Brown didn't play in the last, couple games, but he's played quite a bit You know, he played a lot in that Sun series. And just having somebody that can soak up those minutes from that spot is pretty meaningful. So, yeah, I totally agree that the value of these picks is only going to increase, which I think is it's good for the Thunder in that they can have cheap players on their roster, but also if the value of first round picks increases, you know, it's not, maybe it won't take as many picks to get like a star player, you know, the next go around.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to see what that looks like, where eventually the Thunder are going to make some kind of like Aaron Gordon type of trade, you know, to fill a roster spot or a weakness that the Thunder have down the road, which we just don't know what that is yet. And maybe they won't. Maybe that won't happen, and they figure out how to plug all these spots, you know, in the next couple drafts, and they have this current core of Shea, Giddy, J-Dub, Chet, plus whoever. I mean, they're building something that could be pretty unique and pretty special. You know, I think what the Nuggets are doing is very special. I think the Thunder have a chance to do something similar, but with way more ammo, you know, as far as like team building construction stuff goes. I think people are sleeping a little bit on what the Thunder could be in the future. Just because like I'm looking at all their picks right now and looking at their roster right now, it's like, man, like the Thunder are on their way. I think there's something pretty special happening in Oklahoma City.
And the thing that is hitting me now, we just talked about guys like Wiggins and Isaiah Joe, but more like Wiggins because he was a second round draft pick. You know, we've been so focused on what are these good picks going to get us? Like, who are the stars going to be? But it will be so important in the future that the Thunder are able to continue finding guys in the second round, which they're going to have a lot of second round picks too, for the same reason. Like, just to have really cheap contracts like an Aaron Wiggins who you can keep around for multiple seasons. And because of everything you said about Mark's system, they're actually able to flourish and contribute in a real way.
Mm-hmm.
So all of that made me feel good about the Thunder. There's that thing with the first round pick, which I knew about, the fact that you can't trade, like if you're over that second apron, it actually might even be the first apron, you can't trade a pick 7 years in the future. The part that I didn't realize is that that pick actually gets frozen if you're in the repeater tax for a certain number of years.
It's so wild to think about.
Yeah, and then you have to like get out of the repeater to unfreeze it.
Yeah.
And there's a penalty at some point where your pick gets shunted down to the bottom of the first round, which is wild.
It's a wild one.
Really wild.
I cannot believe that they agreed to do that.
That one is crazy, and I still don't like completely understand the scenario, like how likely that scenario would actually be for a team. Like, obviously, if you're a team who's already contending like a Milwaukee, like it really wouldn't matter at some point if you end up with pick 30 when you were supposed to have like pick 28.
Yeah.
But there are scenarios where you're a team like the Clippers and maybe you were supposed to have like pick 20 and then it gets bumped down to 30 where it really matters. The other thing that I did not know is that there's a complete set of rules on the opposite end of the spectrum, which this would have affected the Thunder in the last few seasons. You know how like you can't be, or like you're not supposed to be below the salary floor, you know, like the minimum salary that you're supposed to have.
Yeah.
But in all reality, like it didn't matter because if you ended the season under that, you just
there's no penalty.
There's no real penalty. There is a legit penalty now, which I did not realize, and it's you have to be above the minimum salary by game one.
Yep.
By game one of the season, you need to be above the minimum salary. If you are not, you do not get the luxury tax payouts at the end of the season, which in the last few years have been increasing and are like, you know, now over 10 million that each of these teams is getting.
Tens of millions of dollars. Yeah.
Yeah. That was crazy to me because that would have definitely affected the Thunder. And you think about how that's going to influence teams in the future. You know, if you do a true like teardown where all the big contracts are gone. I mean, we talked about it when the Thunder were in that position where you couldn't even trade for a contract. I forget which season it was, but you couldn't even trade for a contract that would actually get them up to the floor. Like the gap was so big at some point.
Yeah.
Now you're going to have to be worrying about that in the off season. You can't wait for like the trade deadline to start building that back up. So they were talking about we might see some insane like 1-year deals for like vets, just like for free agents out there on the market, just to get them up to the minimum salary, and then it
20
becomes
million, Mike Muscala. Let's go.
Yeah, which I thought that would be cool. They also talked about that being the beginning of the season kind of being like an unofficial trade deadline in some ways.
Yeah.
Because any teams that are in that position will need to be trading for contracts, or it will need to sign a free agent to like a big money deal. So I just thought that was cool. Go listen to the pod because they talk about a bunch more stuff. But this CBA feels more significant than any previous CBA to me.
Yeah, I mean, and I think there's a lot of very helpful things for a team building a team like the Thunder are. Like it seems
in some ways, but it's a lot harder to keep teams together. Like if you were in the position that the Thunder were back in the day, where you have KD, Harden, Westbrook, all eligible and deserving of max contracts, like you might not be able to keep Serge Ibaka. Like you don't want to be over that second apron. It screws you so bad.
Yeah.
Whether it's in trades or free agency or in the draft, like you are hit from multiple angles.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be hard for anybody to build to keep a contender together for a long time.
Yeah.
But I do think that if you're building through the draft slowly like this, I think that it's easier to do. Whereas like you look at like the Clippers and the Warriors and those teams, like I just think like keeping those teams together for any length of time is going to be impossible. You know,
I do wonder if it makes teams more hesitant to do these big picks packages.
Yeah.
Not a team like the Thunder who has excess picks, but a team who like Portland, for instance.
Yeah.
Like if they unprotect or whatever they have to do to get that Chicago pick so that it frees up their future picks. If they had an opportunity to get someone like Embiid and traded away 6 picks, or 5 picks, whatever, they'd probably do it and it'd be understandable. But having that deficit of picks going forward, especially if you include swaps in there, man, it's just going to be really hard for these teams to build the back of their roster up.
Yeah. It's the competitive advantages are going to move towards not who can spend the most, but who is like the most strategic and like who is thinking about these things in the smartest ways.
And specifically building a system. Like that is one of the reasons why Spo is like such a great coach and why everyone kind of acknowledges that he's the best coach in the league, because they can find guys like Max Strus and Gabe Vincent. And yeah, you're not going to hit on the majority of those guys, but they have the type of system where that feels possible.
Yeah, it's not dissimilar to the Thunders. It's not. We've seen people, just randos, have success that are not randos to us now, but it has allowed a player like Lindy Waters III to become a player.
Yeah,
for the Thunder, where it's like, yeah, I actually kind of like Lindy out there. I'm not sure there's another NBA team that could do that outside the Heat. Like I could see him going to the Heat and being a guy too.
Yeah.
But if you just threw him even on like the Warriors, like I'm not sure how he would do there. If like Lindy was on the Knicks.
No, in fact, I think the Warriors are a great example. They will look back at this as such a missed opportunity that they went through all these drafts and kept drafting guys who so clearly did not fit the Warriors system.
Oh my gosh, I know. And there were so clearly guys that did fit the Warriors system right there.
Yeah, whether it was LaMelo or whether it was Franz the next year, they had the 2 timeline thing, which gets made fun of now, like it could have worked.
Oh, it's a very thin line, because
if they had stuck to what they did and identified players who would immediately work in that system, this really could have worked.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to be LaMelo and Franz. If it was only Franz, like let's say they just whiffed and they were just like hell bent on taking Wiseman.
Yeah.
And then the next year they take Franz. they might be in the finals.
Like they need one more guy.
They just needed the one more guy that would have gotten them there. And that's why I keep thinking about when I think about the draft with the Thunder is like, I don't think they're going to deviate, just to find a guy that fits something that they don't have. Because you think about like the Wiseman thing, it was like, oh man, the Warriors have never had a pick and roll big man like that. Boy, can you just imagine? And then like you do the basketball imagination thing, where it's like, hey, they're gonna, pick and rolls with he and Curry are gonna just be unbelievable, unstoppable. Nobody's got his size and length and skill set and agility and all these things. And it was just like, yeah, but he doesn't.
Now it's like, well, actually, Kevon Looney is what we need.
Yeah, you've got the guy on there who's going to be like your second best player in the playoffs one of these days. Hey, A. Lindgren in the chat throws this out there. Mitchich would be a great asset.
Hey,
for Dallas.
yes, let's go.
Mitchich
Mitchich fake trades
this year. Yeah, 12 and Mitchich for 10. Would you do that? 12 and Mitchich for 10.
Yeah, let's go. I love that.
And also, if you're the Mavs, that makes a ton of sense.
I would actually throw in something else. I'd give him pick 37. Who cares?
I care. I don't want to give him pick 37. I'm not doing that. That is interesting. That is
he could start.
He could start
when Kyrie leaves.
Yeah, when Kyrie is wearing the purple and gold. And that is probably a situation that he would want to go to, or he's playing a significant role, a starter next to Luka, giving yourself a chance to win. That I'm all in on that situation. And then the Thunder can use that. I mean, use that asset. Like a part of the reason that they dealt for him was to be able to have that asset there. Not necessarily him as a player for this team. Because he's really good.
I mean, I kind of love that. It's almost too perfect.
It's almost too good. It's almost too good. There's a world too where you could keep 12 and it's like, man, maybe the Thunder really like this draft and they just decide to deal a player Mitchich and like maybe the Jazz pick where they're like, we're not going to pick 4 guys next year.
Yeah.
To get up to 10. Like that kind of package makes some sense. If it was like Micic, Isaiah Joe, and the top 10 protected Jazz pick, where they could use the pick to go get somebody else. You bring in Micic and Joe. Those are players that I think could really thrive. We saw like Seth Curry be really good with the Mavericks, back in the day. I think Joe could slide in and be a similar type of player for them and really help. And Micic could help. And then they would have this additional first rounder, to trade that could, have some value for next year. They could use that at the deadline or whatever. I mean, I'm in. Nice job there, A. Lindgren in the chat. I think that is really interesting. And if you're the Mavs, I mean, you're basically like breaking it up into like multiple things that could, help. Wade Johnson, what's the point of this comment? The Thunder need a Poku replacement? You can never replace Poku. You can never replace Poku.
What aspect of Poku are we replacing?
I mean, the guy didn't play in meaningful basketball the second half of the season because he broke his leg, and the Thunder did just fine. So I'm not sure that we need a Poku replacement.
I feel you just ride the Poku train
to
the last station.
You let it ride for as long as possible, and maybe something crazy happens. Who knows? It's a big summer for Poku. We're gonna have.
Is there anyone it's not a big summer for? Small summer. Probably Kenrich, I guess. Although he is recovering from surgery.
It's a big summer. He's got to get back to.
Man.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's a big summer for everybody.
Jeez Louise.
Is there anybody? Sharich?
He's got to figure out what's next in his basketball future. That's a big summer.
Yeah, it's a big summer.
Yeah, it's everyone. I mean, maybe Dort.
Who has the biggest summer ahead? Who has the biggest summer ahead, would you say?
The biggest summer on the Thunder. I mean, there's a few different ways to look at this.
Yeah.
I mean, biggest summer from a fan perspective. Actually, I might say Usman Jang.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The reason being, we're talking about all these scenarios where like either they trade up or they add another pick.
Yeah.
Like that could potentially be more competition for Us.
Yeah, especially if they were like, hey, we're ready to add somebody that can be a play finisher kind of guy like Taylor Hendricks.
Yeah.
They add him, like, okay, like you just
All of a sudden Us needs to be significantly better going into next season just to like solidify that spot in the rotation.
Definitely. Yeah, I think Trey Mann is going to have a big summer too. Just needs to have a big summer in order to just stay on the team, like flat out. Because I mean, he's out of the rotation at the end of the year, and this will be a big one because if he's not great coming into next year, it's not going to work for him. But big summer for Chet.
Big summer for Chet.
Big summer for Giddey.
Big summer for Giddey.
Should make a big summer shirt with just all the players' faces on it. Big summer. Big summer.
Last thing, Andrew.
Yep.
Let's talk Houston real quick. I have a little Houston minute.
Let's do it. Dude, I am so glad that Victor Wembanyama is not going to Houston. I think I might say that on every podcast for the rest of time.
Yeah, me too. It's I'm very thankful for that. I'm very thankful they fell to 4. I'm loving all of the Harden discussion because
gosh.
Especially reading Rockets fan comments, they're pretty split as a fan base as to whether this is a good idea.
Yeah.
And it's hard to judge without knowing what he would get. I have to assume if this is any kind of leverage play, it would be for a big contract.
Yeah.
Like at least $40 million a year. I'm assuming for at least 3 years for him to come back to Houston. Because he can probably get something like a little bit less than that from Philly, I'm guessing. So I understand their reservations. I also understand the viewpoint that like he would do a lot for guys like Jabari Smith. He'd do a lot for someone like Jalen Green in terms of just getting them better looks and actually running an offense.
Did you see the Jalen Green comments on the PG pod?
I did, where he said basically it could be a good or bad thing. Like, he did not sound thrilled with the idea. He sounded very diplomatic.
And Paul George was not like thrilled with the idea for him.
Yeah. All of that is very cool. There's also this other angle where like, what if this is a leverage play? Because that's what Brian Windhorst brought up.
Yeah.
That he truly believes this is purely a leverage play to get Harden more money from the Sixers.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, like we have like a Apollo 2.0 scenario where Rockets fans kind of convince themselves that something's going to happen, and then it just doesn't. And the guy goes to another team, and then they just have all this cap space. And, the names that were thrown out was like Dylan Brooks, which I think you had brought up Dylan Brooks as a Rocket.
Let's go. Just go ahead and just put a Rockets jersey on that guy. That
seems like a foregone conclusion at this point.
Happening.
They also brought up like Brook Lopez, which I think is kind of interesting. Just like why Milwaukee just can't let Brook Lopez go. I mean, that would be a huge mistake by them, just because of their current cap situation. It's not like they'd be able to add anyone that would be that impactful.
Brook.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm just
pay him like $25 million or something, or $30 million.
Yeah. And the other angle to the Harden thing is, if they truly do believe that Harden is coming there, and they have already gotten like assurances, they've already tampered everything. Yeah. They're going to lose some second round picks. They're ready to go. Does that influence what they do in the draft? Not just who they take it for, but their willingness to throw in a lot to move up and try to get Scoot, which would be insane if they decided to not attempt that pathway simply because Harden is coming in. And like bringing in Harden and Amen Thompson, who I think Amen Thompson would be a great pick. Just take Amen Thompson, let him be your point guard.
Yeah.
Huge point guard, super athletic next to Jalen Green. I actually think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But to complicate that by bringing Harden back as well, man, there's just so many ways this could go poorly. And I have no faith that they're going to make the right decision. I have no reason to think they will make the right decision, whatever it ends up being. I'm just fascinated by what happens this offseason for the Rockets, because they're going to do something.
Yeah.
It feels like they have a mandate from up top, and even if they didn't have a mandate, this is Raphael Stone's. He's going into his 4th season, I think, as GM.
Yeah.
If they lose again in their 4th season, and they give up like the 6th pick to the Thunder, like, he's probably out of a job, and he's probably not getting another job in the NBA.
Yeah. Probably
So
not.
he has a ton of pressure on him. In the same way that we talked about Troy Weaver, I think Troy Weaver has a lot of pressure on him. By the way, quick thing on Troy Weaver.
Yeah.
I was listening to Bun Cargan show, and the co-host Nick was asking James about the coaching search, and James basically said, "Well, Troy Weaver's guy hasn't been hired yet. Like, Troy Weaver has a guy, and he hasn't been hired yet. That's all I know."
Yeah.
Which I thought was just like a really interesting comment. He was basically saying, like, I know who Troy Weaver wants, which I think is Kevin Ollie, because James reported that Kevin Ollie was the front runner.
Yeah.
And that guy has not been hired by the team. Very interesting.
It's very interesting. And the thoughts on Kevin Ollie as a head coach in the NBA are, let's say, mixed.
Yeah, and I'm also interested, like, if they did hire him, how would that affect their draft? Like, would they be more likely to take Asar Thompson over someone like Cam Whitmore?
Asar?
Is it Asar?
I don't know. I've heard Asar.
He's one of those guys that has a name that is 50-50, where I've heard both versions,
Yeah.
and I've been told the correct one, but because there's 2 versions, I keep going back and forth. I can never remember which one.
Pretty sure it's Asar, and
Asar
he's not
Thompson.
a dinosaur.
Oh, that's very helpful, actually.
Yeah, not a dinosaur.
He's young. Because he's young.
And he's modern.
Because he's modern. And dinosaurs are not modern. Okay. Asar. Okay, that actually is very helpful. Would they take Asar Thompson because Kevin Ollie was his coach at OTE?
I mean, it seems like they might.
Because he is kind of what they need as well. I mean, it's the same reason why they might take Cam Whitmore. Like, they need a wing. That's the most obvious thing they're missing.
Yeah. They need a wing badly. And we had James on Slam and Jam, and he was coming up with all kinds of crazy trades to bring somebody in, particularly the RJ Barrett one, which I just outright dismiss as being so.
I mean, there was a reason Fred Katz accepted that one so quickly.
Oh yeah, there's a reason Fred was like, "Oh yeah, this is great. Let's do this." Awesome. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. There is pressure on them to win as well. Yeah, it's going to be such an interesting offseason. You see, Pat Beverly said that he's going to be a Rocket too.
I did. Very cool. Very cool.
Oh, what a disaster waiting to happen in Houston.
I am so excited to see what happens, because there are rumors, and also you just look at the roster, that Steven Silas was basically being told who to play. Like, we want to play all these young guys. Ime Udoka, what if he just, and I think this is probably likely, like, what if he just plays Patrick Beverly over KPJ? Like, what if KPJ just is kind of just done on the roster? KPJ seems like he makes a lot of the mistakes that would infuriate Udoka.
Well, Udoka, you have to play defense.
Yeah.
Like, that was his calling card in Boston, was you have to compete defensively, which will be very, very interesting for guys like KPJ and for Şengün, because
Şengün, especially if they get another option at center. Like, if they did get someone like Brook Lopez.
Oh yeah, Şengün, bye.
Like, that would be that's kind of what I think would happen too. Like, Udoka would just play Brook Lopez, 25, 30 minutes a game.
Yeah.
And Şengün is still playing the same amount of minutes that he got last year.
Yeah. It's wild. It's wild. It's going to be a fun summer. I think there are going to be some, like, legitimately, like, jaw-dropping things that happen this summer.
Yeah, I hope so.
Which I'm very much looking forward to. All right. Hope you guys have an awesome Wednesday, and we will talk to you guys again on Friday.